The wrong door. The corridors of the human base were quiet at night, lit only by the dim glow of the ceiling lights. Most of the soldiers had already gone to sleep, and the engines in the hangar hummed in the distance like a tired beast resting. It was in this silence that the alien woman walked alone, her bare feet making no sound against the cold floor. She was not supposed to be here. She was not even supposed to be alive among humans. Her name was lost in translation. No human tongue could say it right, but in their records, she was simply the outsider. She had been found injured weeks ago and allowed to stay in the base, though not truly welcomed. Every hallway she passed carried whispers. Every corner had human eyes watching her like she was a danger, or worse, like she was a mistake. Tonight, she was searching for a place where she could breathe. The small room given to her was cold and empty. No warmth, no safety. She thought perhaps she could walk until her mind grew calm. But her mind did not calm. It only grew heavier. Turning down another corridor, she stopped before a door. It looked like the others, metal and plain, with the same control panel. She did not know why, but something in her heart told her to push it open. Maybe she just wanted to test her courage. Maybe she simply wanted to feel alive by doing something wrong. The door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, the room was different from hers. It was not cold and empty. There were personal things: hair, a jacket hanging by the wall, tools spread across a desk, a small lamp giving off warm yellow light. And sitting on the bed, leaning forward while checking something in his hands, was a human pilot. She froze. Her breath caught in her throat. The man looked up at once. His eyes locked onto hers. For a long, heavy moment, no one moved. The alien woman expected anger, shouting, maybe even punishment. She had stepped into the private space of a human soldier. Surely this was forbidden. Her people always told her humans were quick to anger. But the human pilot did not shout. He blinked, then set down the small device he was working on. His voice was calm, low, almost gentle. "You're not supposed to be here." She opened her mouth, but no words came. Her throat was tight. She gripped the edge of the door, ready to run. But his tone was not threatening. It was simply a statement. Not an order. Not a weapon. For a few seconds, silence stretched between them. The pilot stood, his tall frame shadowing the lamp's glow. She expected him to chase her away. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, studying her like one might study a puzzle. Her chest rose and fell quickly. Should she leave? Yes, she should. But her feet did not move. Something about this room, about this man, it did not push her out. Instead, it pulled her in. Finally, he broke the silence. "You're lost, aren't you?" She swallowed, her lips trembling. Her human words were broken, clumsy, but she forced them out. Wrong door. The corner of his mouth twitched. Almost a smile. He stepped aside as if making space for her to enter rather than pushing her out. That small action confused her more than anything. Why was he not angry? Why did his room feel warmer than the rest of the base? Why, when she had opened the wrong door, did it suddenly feel like the right place? She stayed there, half inside, half outside, her heart racing. The man did not move closer, did not raise his voice, did not threaten her. He simply sat back down on the bed, picking up the piece of metal again, working quietly as though her presence did not disturb him at all. She took a cautious step inside. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Now she was trapped in this small room with him, but strangely, she did not feel trapped. She felt safe. Her eyes wandered over the room pictures on the wall. A blanket folded neatly, a mug with half-drunk tea. Small signs of life, signs of belonging. Things her room never had. The human pilot glanced at her again, and this time his eyes were softer. "You can sit," he said, motioning toward the chair by the desk. His words were not a command, but an invitation. She hesitated. Aliens were not supposed to sit in human rooms. Aliens were not supposed to look at humans this closely. But something inside her wanted to listen. Slowly, she walked forward and lowered herself into the chair, her hands resting nervously on her knees. The silence between them was not heavy now. It was strange, but it was not uncomfortable. He kept working, and she kept watching. The lamplight made the shadows gentle, and for the first time since she had entered the human base, she felt that maybe she was not hated here. Her heart whispered. A dangerous thought, maybe this was the place she was searching for all along. And so, the alien woman, who had entered the wrong door by accident, began to wonder if she had finally found the only door that was meant for her. The silent exchange. The room was quiet, except for the faint clicking of metal in the human pilot's hands. He was fixing a broken piece of flight gear, his fingers steady, his eyes focused. The alien woman sat in the chair, too afraid to speak, too curious to leave. Her heart thudded in her chest like a drum that refused to calm. She watched him carefully. His skin looked different in the glow of the lamp, warm and human, his hair a little messy, as if he had been working for hours. He did not look like the other soldiers who stared at her with suspicion. His face was calm, almost patient. She could not understand why he allowed her to stay. Minutes passed, but the silence was not heavy. It was strange, almost peaceful. She thought silence with a human would feel dangerous, like standing on a battlefield. But here, it felt safe. Safe in a way she had never known before. The man lifted his eyes from his work. He noticed how tense she sat, her shoulders stiff, her hands gripping her knees. Slowly, he reached to the side table, picked up a clear bottle of water, and placed it near her on the desk. He said nothing, just pushed it closer to her. Her eyes widened. No one had offered her anything since she came to this base. Not food, not water, not even a kind word. She looked at the bottle as if it were something rare, then at him. His gaze returned to his work, as though the act meant nothing to him. Hesitantly, she reached out and touched the bottle. Her fingers trembled as she lifted it. She had almost forgotten the taste of kindness. She took a sip. The cool water slid down her throat, calming the tightness in her chest. She whispered, her words broken and low. "Thank you." The pilot gave no dramatic reaction, only a small nod. That simple nod made her feel something she could not explain. The alien woman shifted in her seat, her eyes wandering again over his room. She noticed small things: an old photo tucked into the corner of the mirror, a scarf draped across the bed, the faint scent of tea. It felt lived in, real. Nothing like the cold, empty space she had been given. Her chest ached with a feeling she didn't understand. She thought of her own kind, how they had rejected her. Even among humans, she had felt unwanted. But this room, this human, made her feel like maybe she did not have to run anymore. The man finally spoke, his voice quiet, almost curious. "Why are you out this late?" She froze. Words in human language were difficult for her, but she forced them out, slowly, carefully. Room, cold, empty. He looked at her for a long moment, then leaned back slightly. There was no judgment in his eyes. Instead, there was something else: understanding. "Empty rooms aren't good," he said simply, turning back to his work. His words hit her like a stone dropped in still water. She lowered her eyes, gripping the bottle tightly. He did not ask more. He did not demand answers she could not give. He simply went back to his task, letting silence fill the space again. The alien woman watched his hands as they moved with precision. The soft sound of tools against metal was strangely soothing. It was like music without instruments. She found herself relaxing, her shoulders lowering, her breathing slowing. For the first time in weeks, she did not feel like she had to run. For the first time, she did not feel hated. The lamp's glow wrapped around them both, making the room feel like its own little world. Outside, the base was filled with suspicion, whispers, and cold eyes. But in here, there was warmth. She shifted again, accidentally brushing against the edge of the desk. The pilot looked up briefly, then down again, unfazed. She expected anger at disturbing him, but there was none. Only quiet acceptance. Her lips parted. She wanted to ask why he was so different, why he didn't push her away like the others. But the words would not come. Her human tongue was too weak for such questions. Instead, she stayed silent, and in that silence, something powerful happened. A bond was being written, not with words, but with quiet gestures. A nod, a bottle of water, a chair shared between two strangers. The alien woman leaned back slightly, her eyes softer now. She realized she did not want to leave. Not yet. Maybe. Not ever. Her thoughts whispered inside her. Why this man? Why this room? Why does my heart feel calm here? The human pilot finished adjusting the piece of gear and set it down. He finally looked at her, meeting her gaze fully. His eyes held no fear, no hatred, only a strange calm. You can stay a little, he said quietly. Her breath caught. Stay. No one had ever wanted her to stay anywhere. Her lips trembled, but she only nodded once, unable to speak. The silence returned, but it was no longer empty. It was full of meaning, full of something unspoken, something dangerous, something alive. And as the night deepened, the alien woman realized a terrifying truth. She had opened the wrong door, but found the only place where she finally felt she belonged. The unspoken bond, the alien woman sat quietly in the human pilot's room. Her fingers curled around the half-empty bottle of water he had given her. The lamp's warm glow touched her face, softening her sharp features. For the first time in many nights, she was not shivering from cold or fear. The human pilot worked silently on his gear again. But she noticed something different now. Every movement of his hands was calm, steady, like he had done this 100 times before. She wondered how someone could be so sure, so confident. She wondered why just watching him made her feel safe. Her eyes lingered on him longer than she intended. His shoulders were broad, his jaw lined with the tiredness of a soldier who had seen too much. Yet his expression was patient, almost gentle. She thought of the other humans on the base, their eyes filled with suspicion. None of them looked at her like this. None of them treated her as if she was not a problem, but a person. The silence between them grew, but it was not empty anymore. It was full of something she could not name. Every second stretched, carrying with it a weight, an invisible thread that tied her to him. He noticed her staring. For a moment, their eyes locked. Her heart jumped, and she quickly looked down, embarrassed. But his gaze had not been harsh, had been calm, steady, like the earth itself. The alien woman's mind spun. Why was she still here? She could leave, go back to her empty quarters, hide again, but her feet would not move. Something inside her wanted to stay, wanted to sit in this warm, quiet space for as long as she could. The human leaned back slightly. Setting his tools aside, he broke the silence with words that carried no force, only curiosity. You don't trust people here, do you? Her throat tightened. She struggled to form words in the human tongue. They don't want me, she said slowly, each word heavy, uncertain. His expression did not change. He only nodded, as though he understood completely. They don't know you. Those simple words pierced her heart. No one had ever said that before. To the others, she was always strange, dangerous, unwanted. But this human? he saw her differently. She leaned forward a little, her voice barely a whisper. "And you? You know me?" The question was clumsy, her accent rough, but the meaning was clear. The pilot looked at her for a long time before answering. "I don't know you yet, but I don't need to push you away either." Her chest ached. She had no reply. Her tongue failed her, but her heart spoke in ways she could not explain. She felt something shift inside her, something she had long forgotten, hope. The minutes stretched. She stayed seated, watching him work again. This time, her breathing slowed. She noticed small details, the way he hummed softly under his breath, the way he adjusted his tools with care. It was like watching an artist, not a soldier. Without realizing, she relaxed. Her body leaned against the chair, her hands unclenched. The fear that usually lived inside her chest loosened its grip. The human glanced at her again, and their eyes met once more. But this time, she did not look away so quickly. Something silent passed between them, something that did not need words. A bond was forming. Quiet, invisible, fragile, but real. The alien woman's thoughts drifted back to her people. She remembered the way they had turned their backs on her, how her name had been erased from their songs, how her presence was considered a stain. She had been alone for so long that she forgot what it felt like to be wanted. And now, sitting in a stranger's room, she realized she did not feel alone anymore. She took another sip of water, her voice trembling as she whispered, "Safe." Here, the pilot's head lifted slightly and his eyes softened even more. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The silence said enough. A gentle hum filled the room, the engine sounds from far away, the faint buzzing of the lamp. These were ordinary noises, but tonight they felt different. Tonight they felt like a song. The alien woman let her gaze wander again. The walls of this room were plain, but to her they were warmer than any place she had known in years. She thought of leaving, just to see if he would stop her. But her heart warned her if she left, she might never find this feeling again, so she stayed. The human leaned forward, adjusting the strap on his gear. "You'll have to return before morning," he said softly. "If others see you here, it will be trouble." Her heart sank at his words, but she nodded slowly. She knew he was right. But in her chest, a quiet defiance grew. She did not want to leave. Not tonight, not tomorrow, maybe not ever. The pilot looked at her one last time before lowering his eyes again. "Stay a little longer," he added, almost. Under his breath, her lips parted in surprise. He had given her the choice. He had given her the one thing no one else had ever offered: freedom to belong. And so, in the warm silence of a human's room, an alien woman discovered the unspoken bond that tied her to him. Not with chains, not with orders, but with something far stronger: acceptance. And it terrified her how much she wanted to keep it. Shadows of the past, the alien woman sat in silence, her eyes fixed on the faint yellow glow of the lamp. The human pilot had gone back to repairing his gear, but she was not really watching his hands anymore. Her mind had drifted far away, back into the places she tried so hard to forget. Her people's voices echoed inside her head. Cold words, sharp like blades. "You do not belong with us. You bring shame. Leave." She had been cast out, not for anything she had done, but simply for being different. A mistake in their eyes. A curse in their songs. She closed her eyes tightly, as if shutting them would erase those memories. But shadows of her past followed her everywhere. The looks of disgust, the hands that pushed her away, the moments she begged for kindness and received only silence. Her chest tightened, her fingers gripping the bottle of water too hard. She almost stood up to leave the human's room, to run before the past swallowed her again. "Why am I here?" she thought bitterly. Why am I sitting in this man's space, pretending it is mine? The chair creaked softly as she moved. Up. The sound caught the pilot's attention. He looked up, his calm eyes studying her face. She quickly turned away, hiding the storm inside her. "You're restless," he said quietly. She didn't answer. Her throat was dry, but her silence was answer enough. The pilot set down his tools, leaning forward slightly. His voice carried no force, no command, only curiosity. "Someone hurt you before, didn't they?" The words struck her like an arrow. She flinched, her nails digging into her palm. She could not answer. Her human words were too weak, and her alien ones would not reach him. But her silence again betrayed her. The man's gaze softened, his voice even quieter now. "You don't have to tell me. I can see it." The alien woman's heart trembled. No one had ever said that before. No one had looked at her pain and acknowledged it. Her people had erased her suffering. The humans on this base had ignored it. But this man? He had seen it without her saying a single word. Tears threatened at the corners of her eyes, but she blinked them away quickly. She did not want him to see her weakness. Yet, even as she tried to hide it, part of her longed for him to see, longed for him to understand. Her lips finally moved. The words were broken, but they escaped. "I was not wanted. Never wanted." The pilot did not interrupt. He listened, his eyes steady, his expression unchanged. His silence encouraged her to continue. "They say, tie brings shame. They push away, alone, always." Her voice cracked on the last word. For a long moment, the room was filled only with the quiet hum of the base's engines far below. Then the human spoke, his tone firm, certain. They were wrong. The alien woman's breath caught. She lifted her eyes, staring at him in disbelief. Wrong? No one had ever said that before. To her people, their judgment had been law. To the humans in the base, her rejection had been obvious truth. But this man, he had broken that truth with only 3 words. She wanted to ask why. She wanted to demand what he saw in her that no one else did. But the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she only stared, as if her silence could ask the question for her. The pilot leaned back, his hands folding loosely in his lap. "They didn't want to see you. That's not your fault." Her chest tightened, and for a moment, she could not breathe. She turned her face away, afraid he might see the tears threatening again. But inside, something fragile cracked open, something like hope, something like trust. The silence stretched again, but it was no longer heavy with fear. It was heavy with truth, with things she could not yet say. Her eyes wandered across the room once more. She noticed the jacket hanging on the wall. Worn, but clean. The photo tucked into the mirror's corner, showing a group of pilots smiling. These small things told her that this human, too, had his own past, his own story. Perhaps his shadows were different, but they existed. The thought comforted her in a strange way. Maybe they were not so different after all. She whispered again, her voice almost broken. "You, not afraid." The pilot met her gaze. "Of you? No." Those words struck her deeper than anything else. All her life, she had been treated as something dangerous, a mistake to fear or to hide. And now, here was a human soldier, strong and skilled, saying he was not afraid of her at all. Her hands trembled in her lap. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to stay in this room forever, away from the whispers and the cold stares. But fear still gnawed at her heart. What if the others found out? What if tomorrow he changed his mind? What if this bond was only a fragile dream that could shatter in an instant? Her mind screamed with doubts, but her heart whispered something else. Stay. Just stay. The pilot picked up his tools again, giving her space to breathe. He did not demand, did not press, did not force. He simply allowed her to exist in his presence. And that was more than anyone had ever given her before. The alien woman sat back in the chair, her chest still heavy, but her heart a little lighter. The shadows of her past still clung to her, but for the first time, she felt they were not strong enough to crush her completely. Not while she sat here. Not while he allowed her to stay. And deep inside, she realized a truth she had been too. Afraid to name, she did not want to leave this room, not because she was hiding from her past, but because she was beginning to see a future. The first words the night grew deeper, but the alien woman still did not move from the chair. Her body was tired, her mind heavy, yet her heart refused to leave this place. The room, with its soft lamp and quiet warmth, had become something she never thought she would find a shelter. The human pilot had finished working on his gear. Now, the tools lay neatly on the desk, and he sat on the edge of his bed, elbows resting on his knees. His eyes were on her, calm and steady. The alien woman felt the weight of his gaze. It was not heavy with suspicion like the others, not sharp like a blade. His eyes held something gentler, something she struggled to name. She wanted to look away, but her heart forced her to meet his gaze. For long minutes, they simply looked at each other. Two strangers from two different worlds, bound by a silence that said more than words ever could. But silence could only last so long. Her chest rose and fell quickly. She wanted to speak, to ask the question burning in her heart since the moment she stepped inside. The human tongue was difficult, clumsy on her lips, but she forced the words out anyway. Why not chase me away? The sound of her own voice startled her. She had spoken so little since arriving at the base that hearing herself felt strange, almost wrong. But the question was out now, trembling in the air. The human pilot tilted his head slightly. He did not answer right away. Instead, he studied her face, as though the answer he sought was written in her eyes. Then, at last, he spoke. Because you looked like you needed to stay. Her breath caught. She stared at him, unsure if she had understood correctly, needed to stay. No one had ever thought of her needs before. No one had ever cared if she stayed or left. Her lips trembled, but she whispered again. But I am not wanted, not here, not anywhere. The pilot's voice was firm, but not harsh. Maybe not by them, but here, right now, I don't see a reason to send you away. Her chest tightened painfully. The words were simple, yet they broke through years of rejection. For so long, she had carried the belief that she was nothing, that she deserved nothing. But this human's words struck at the very heart of that lie. Tears stung at the corners of her eyes. She tried to hold them back, tried to stay strong. Aliens were not supposed to cry in front of humans. Weakness was dangerous. Yet, no matter how hard she tried, her tears slipped free, rolling silently down her cheeks. The pilot did not flinch. He did not look away in discomfort. He only watched her quietly, letting her cry without judgment. Embarrassed, she wiped her face quickly with the back of her hand. Sorry, she whispered. Weak? The pilot shook his head. Not weak. Honest. His words cut deeper than any blade. She looked at him with wide eyes, searching his face for mockery, for lies. But there were none, only truth. Her hands trembled in her lap. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that her tears were not shameful, that her presence here was not a mistake. And for the first time, she did. The silence returned. But it was no longer empty, was filled with everything unspoken, the pain she had carried, the kindness he had shown, the fragile bond growing between them. Finally, she leaned forward slightly, her voice soft, uncertain. You, different, not like others. The pilot gave a faint smile, the first true smile she had seen on his face. Maybe I am. Or maybe everyone else is wrong about you. Her heart thudded at his words. Everyone else. Wrong? The thought was terrifying, but also freeing. If he was right, then her entire life of rejection had been built on lies. Her hands clenched around the bottle of water again, but this time, not out of fear, out of hope. Stay, she whispered, almost too softly to hear. Her eyes widened, in shock at her own words. She had not meant to say them, but they had slipped out, pulled from the depths of her heart. The pilot's eyes softened further. He didn't laugh, didn't reject her. He only nodded once, as if the word had meaning to him too. You can stay a little longer, he said quietly. Her chest ached, but it was not the ache of sorrow. It was something else, something new, something that felt like the beginning of life after years of emptiness. She lowered her head, hiding her small smile. For the first time since she could remember, she felt chosen not by mistake, not by accident, but by someone who wanted her presence. The night stretched on, but she did not notice the passing hours. The shadows of her past still lingered, but they no longer felt so heavy. Not with him here, not with his words echoing in her heart. Because you looked like you needed to stay. Those words would stay with her forever. And, as her eyes grew heavy with sleep, the alien woman realized a dangerous truth. She no longer wanted to leave this room. Not tonight, not tomorrow. Perhaps not ever. The heart's realization the alien woman had not meant to stay this long. She had told herself she would only rest for a moment, only sit in the warmth of the human pilot's room until her heart stopped trembling. But the hours passed like quiet waves, and still she remained. The pilot had stopped working on his gear. Now he sat on the edge of the bed, leaning back slightly, his eyes half closed in thought. The lamp cast shadows across his face, making him look both strong and tired, like a man who had carried too much but never complained. The alien woman sat opposite him, her knees pulled close, her hands holding the empty water bottle he had given. She had not spoken again since those fragile words. Why not chase me away? But his answer echoed in her chest even now. Because you looked like you needed to stay. She could not escape those words. They had broken something inside her now. Not broken, changed. For so long she had lived with rejection, told she was not worth keeping. Yet, this human, a stranger, had given her what her people never had. A reason to believe she mattered. Her eyes lifted, studying him in the soft light. Every small detail drew her in the way. His jaw clenched slightly when he was thinking. The way his shoulders relaxed when he noticed her watching. The way he didn't turn away when she met his gaze. Something stirred inside her chest, unfamiliar and dangerous. She had thought safety was all she wanted, but now there was something more. She whispered to herself in her own alien tongue, words that humans could not understand. Why him? Why does my heart move when he looks at me? The pilot noticed her soft murmur, but did not ask what it meant. Instead, he spoke, his voice low, carrying a weight of its own. You're not used to kindness, are you? Her breath caught. Slowly, she shook her head. No, never. He leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees. That explains why you don't trust it. Her lips parted in protest, but the truth in his words silenced her. He was right. Every time he showed her kindness, she had doubted it, waiting for it to vanish, waiting for him to turn cold like all the others. But he hadn't. He hadn't turned away. Her throat tightened. She wanted to speak more, but her human words were weak. Still, she tried. Kindness, is trap or real? The question hung in the air, sharp and fragile. The pilot did not answer immediately. He studied her for a long moment, then shook his head. It's real. At least here. At least from me. Her heart leaped painfully at his words. Real. She wanted so badly to believe him. She wanted to let go of all her fear and trust what he said. But fear still clung to her like chains. Her eyes fell to the floor. If I believe. Then broken again. The pilot's expression softened. He leaned closer, his voice firmer now. Then you stand up again. But don't run from something good just because you're afraid of losing it. The alien woman froze, her breath trembling. Those words hit her harder than anything else. Don't run. All her life, she had run from her people, from rejection, from pain. And now, without realizing, she had almost run again. Even from this man who had given her kindness. Slowly, her eyes lifted to his. Her voice shook as she whispered, I don't want to run. The pilot's lips curved into the faintest smile. Then don't. The silence that followed was no longer heavy. It was filled with something powerful, something alive. The alien woman sat back, her hands pressed against her chest. She could feel it, the realization she had been avoiding. This human was no longer just a stranger, no longer just a soldier, offering her shelter. He was becoming something far more dangerous to her heart. She wanted to be near him. She wanted to hear his voice, see his calm eyes, feel the safety of his presence. And that want was terrifying. Her mind warned her. This was weakness. This was dangerous. But her heart whispered louder. This was life. The lamp flickered slightly, drawing her attention. She realized how quiet the base was now, how the world outside this room felt far away. For the first time in years, she was not thinking about her past, not fearing the whispers of her people. She was only here, in this moment, with him. The pilot stood finally, stretching his arms. It's late, he said softly. You should rest. Her chest tightened at his words. Rest. Did that mean she had to leave? Her body stiffened, fear rising again. She lowered her head, whispering, so softly he almost didn't hear. Not want to leave. The silence that followed was thick. The pilot looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he nodded. Then stay, at least for tonight. Her heart raced wildly. Stay. He had given her permission not just to be in his room, but to belong, even if only for a night. She lowered her head again, hiding the small, trembling smile that touched her lips. Her chest ached with a truth she could no longer deny. She had entered this room by mistake. She had told herself she would leave quickly. But now she knew the truth. She didn't want to leave. She couldn't leave, because somewhere between silence and words, between fear and kindness, she had begun to feel something her heart had never known. And in that moment, the alien woman realized she had not just found safety in this room. She had found something far more dangerous. She had found the beginning of love, the room. She never wants to leave. The alien woman sat quietly, her body pressed against the edge of the chair, her heart still racing from his last words. Then stay. At least for tonight, she could not believe it. For years, she had lived with rejection, treated as an outcast by her people and an intruder among humans. Yet here she was, in the room of a human pilot, given permission to stay out of duty, not out of pity. But because he wanted her here. The lamp glowed softly, the only light in the room. The rest of the base was silent, asleep. But inside this room, her heart beat like a storm, alive in a way it had never been before. The human pilot moved quietly, pulling an extra blanket from his bed and setting it on the chair beside her. "You'll be warmer with this," he said. Her eyes widened. No one had ever offered her comfort before. Slowly, with trembling hands, she pulled the blanket around her shoulders. The warmth spread through her body, but it was nothing compared to the warmth she felt in her heart. She looked at him, her lips parting as if to speak, but no words came. How could she explain the storm of feelings inside her with the few broken human words she knew? Still, she tried. You. Not push me away. Why? The pilot leaned back against the wall, his eyes calm. Because sometimes, Atipa need a place to belong. Maybe you found yours tonight. Her breath caught. A place to belong. Those words hit her harder than any weapon. For so long, she had been searching for such a place. She had believed it did not exist. And now, in the quiet of a human's room, she wondered if she had finally found it. The silence stretched again, but it was not empty. It was filled with all the things neither of them could say. The bond between them had grown without words. Woven out of silence, kindness, and trust. The alien woman lowered her head, her voice trembling. I don't want to leave. The words escaped before she could stop them. Her heart pounded in fear. What if he rejected her now? What if he said she had to go, that her place was still outside, in the cold corridors of the base? But the pilot did not reject her. His eyes softened, and he gave the faintest nod. Then don't. Her chest ached with relief. She pressed her hands to her heart, feeling the strange rhythm inside it. It was not fear, not loneliness. It was something. Knew something she was afraid to name. The pilot spoke again, his voice low. Tomorrow might be difficult. People may not understand. But tonight, this room is yours as much as it is mine. Her eyes filled with tears. She quickly wiped them away, but one slipped free, shining in the lamplight. She whispered, her voice fragile, thank you. He didn't reply with words. He didn't need to. The quiet acceptance in his eyes was enough. The alien woman leaned back in the chair, clutching the blanket tightly. For the first time in her life, she felt safe enough to let her guard down. Her eyes grew heavy, her body relaxing. She drifted toward sleep, but even in her drowsiness, one thought echoed inside her: this is the place. I never want to leave. Her dreams that night were different from the ones she was used to. No shadows of rejection, no whispers of shame. Only warmth, only belonging. When dawn began to touch the horizon, faint light creeping into the room through the narrow window, she stirred awake. The human pilot was still there, sitting quietly, watching the light change. He looked at her as she woke, and for a moment, she feared it had all been a dream. But the blanket still rested on her shoulders, and his calm eyes still held no rejection. She sat up slowly, her heart heavy with the thought of the world outside this room. The base would wake soon. Soldiers would walk the halls. Whispers would return. Cold eyes would follow her again. But here, in this room, she had been more than the outsider. She had been seen. She had been accepted. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "If I leave, will you forget me?" The pilot shook his head once. "No, I'll remember. Always." Tears stung her eyes again. She looked away quickly, but she could not hide the small smile that tugged at her lips. The morning grew brighter, and she knew she could not stay hidden forever. But deep inside, a truth had already been written. No matter what happened tomorrow, no matter what the others said, she would carry this night in her heart, because this was the night. She had found what she never thought she would, a place to belong, and a person who did not push her away. She had entered the wrong door by accident, but it had led her to the only door she never wanted to leave.